Okay, great. All right. We're going to go back to another dictionary definition. Like I said last week, we're going to do myo today.
Yep.
Okay, before we start reading the lecture. So myo is actually on page 417 of the Buddhist dictionary, in case you want a point of reference. That's where I'm reading from. Myo means wonderful, mystic, without peer, or beyond conception. Is everybody clear what that just said? You say wonderful, mystic, without peer, or beyond conception. Do you understand what that's saying?
Without peer.
Okay.
Something like
Wonderful. We know that myo is the wonderful law, right?
Yes.
Wonderful. Mystic. What's mystic? Mystic is that beyond the capacity that we have to perceive it. It's straight. We understand how it could be, but we don't understand it. Without peer. Do you know what without peer would be saying? There's nothing equal to it. There is nothing equal to myo. Without peer. Or beyond conception. What does beyond conception mean? It's beyond your capacity to conceive the truth of myo, which is one of the reasons why I picked it, because there's actually two myos. All right? Yeah, there's two. There's absolute myo and there's relative myo. Okay, just like entity of the mystic law. It's the same kind of thing. Actually, it's this. I'll get into it. Okay, this term is used to describe the Buddhist law, which is wonderful and beyond ordinary understanding. In the profound meaning of the Lotus Sutra, Tentai interprets the word myo, wonderful, of the title Myoho Rengekyo, or the Lotus Sutra of the Wonderful Law, from two perspectives to show the profundity of the sutra. The first is the relative myo, also referred to as comparative myo. The relative myo means that the Lotus Sutra is wonderful or mystic because when compared with all other teachings, it is superior. Myo does not merely mean the Lotus Sutra is superior to all other teachings, however. Okay, does everybody understand where he's going with this? Hence, hang on. Yeah, however, hence the second interpretation, the absolute myo. This means that the Lotus Sutra cannot be compared with any other teaching because it encompasses and integrates all other teachings. No teaching exists outside it, and thus none can be called superior or inferior to it. From this viewpoint, all teachings, when based on the Lotus Sutra, express various aspects of ultimate truth. Nichiren interpreted myo, referring to Nam-myoho Renge-kyo, when he deemed the essence of the Lotus Sutra in the Daimoku of the Lotus Sutra, which is one of his 10 major writings. We'll read it someday. He explains, actually we have already read it. In the Daimoku of the Lotus Sutra, he explains three meanings of the character myo: to open, to be fully endowed, and to revive. To open means to open up the darkness of illusion and reveal the Buddha nature. You understand that one? To open, okay? To be fully endowed means to possess all 10 worlds and 3,000 realms while permeating and integrating the whole of the phenomenal world. Does everybody understand that? What that means? It means to possess all 10 worlds, right? It means you've established Buddhahood in your life. You're at least a Buddha. You're no longer just a Buddha in theory, right? While permeating and integrating the whole of the phenomenal world. While permeating and integrating, what does that mean? By being a part of all things. While being a part of all things. Okay? It can also mean possessing the practices and resulting virtues of all Buddhas, which every single Buddha does. Do you understand that? No Buddha is just on their own in terms of the merit that they receive by having attained Buddhahood. Do you understand that? Does everybody understand that? When you attain Buddhahood, you share in the virtues and causes of all other Buddhas. That's the Buddha nature is not an individual thing, it's a cumulative thing. You understand? That's why a person can start chanting and from the first Daimoku receive effect. Okay, they can tap into that mystic cannot be conceived power within their own life. The Gohonzan and Nam-myoho Renge-kyo isn't outside of you, right? Even though a new practitioner would have difficulty perceiving and understanding that. Just like a new practitioner would have difficulty understanding, perceiving absolute myo. Okay, relative myo is more like this lifetime. It's more like it's a comparative kind of thing.
Yeah.
Okay, but the original state is absolute myo. Okay, the Nam-myoho Renge-kyo of the original state is absolute myo. Do you understand? Okay, so he says the third meaning is to revive, means enabling one to attain Buddhahood. All right, because mystically we have the inherent potentiality that we are able to draw forth when we practice the Buddhism of the sowing and the latter day of the law. Right? Right, so that's what enables us to attain Buddhahood. For example, women and evil men and those of the two vehicles, voice hearers and cause awakened ones who were denied the possibility of enlightenment in the provisional teachings, can all attain Buddhahood through the Daimoku of the Lotus Sutra. To revive also means that all teachings and doctrines, when based upon the mystic law, assume their correct perspective and fulfill their intrinsic purpose. So what does that say? Says that there's nothing by accident. Everything's based on causality. Everything has its component place in the process of life. Okay? There's nothing wasted. There's nothing that's by chance. Okay? It's mystic. It's beautiful. It's complete. And it's perfect in that it contains all that imperfection. That's what makes it perfect. It contains the true reality of life. The true reality of life is imperfect. Do you understand? So, again, Nam-myoho Renge-kyo, we can call it the perfect teaching. But that perfect teaching contains within it all the other teachings which we deem imperfect. In its ultimate truth. Do you understand? Because everything that has validity in existence is based on causality. And all of causality is actually functional based on the law of the simultaneity of cause and effect. All right? So every miracle from every other philosophy is actually based on this reality. Okay? Everything that everybody else uses as an influence to demonstrate their power is actually the effect of causes. It could be a variety of different things that make those causes functional and part of that person's reality and environment. But once again, it's still based on cause and effect. If you go back to the merits, if you think logically about the merits of all other philosophies, why do people practice other philosophies?
The trick thing.
Because they find merit in doing so. They have somehow had an experience to convince them that this helped me achieve something that I wasn't able to achieve in the absence of it.
It works for them.
It works for them.
Yeah.
Right, okay? So, on what basis does anything work? Cause and effect. Cause and effect. Cause and effect. So this law of causality that we tap into directly is indirectly responsible for all other things. Do you understand? There is no separation. That's why when the Daishonen's whole teaching is about this universality of all things, you contain, the entire universe is contained within your life, this teaching says, right? Okay? That's the concept. That's where it's coming from. It's coming from absolute myo. Absolute myo is the indivisibility of all things. All things are connected, and all things are only whole on a basis of all things. Because in reality, if you start to say all things without including all things, you're creating a separation right there.
Yeah.
Do you understand? So when we talk about the original state, when we talk about this very deep concept of Kuanganjo, it's all contained right there. Do you understand?
It's not. It's also. It's something like Ichinen Sansen and.
It's the best. It's the basis of Ichinen Sansen.
Yeah.
It's the basis of Ichinen Sansen. It's the basis. That law is why Ichinen Sansen can occur. When he talks about, it means to fully endowed means to possess all 10 worlds. You know, you can be in a state of existence and not possess all 10 worlds. You possess those 10 worlds, but when it says fully endowed, it says they haven't been awakened yet. That's why this says to open, to revive. This is all those, that's all still Myo. You get it?
Yes.
Okay, so Myo is very key to everything.
Everything.
So
Okay.
there is no accident.
No, there are no accidents. There are no accidents. We were just having a conversation before. It's just like we could take a look at, you know, I'll go back to an easy one like I did. To Tatsunokuchi. Was Tatsunokuchi a bad thing? Nichiren Daishonin was, you know,
No, it's
written off to go be executed, and his disciples were all persecuted, and he was sent off to exile. Was that ultimately a bad thing? No, that resulted in him being able to reveal his true identity.
Yeah.
That ultimately then foundationalized what he thought to be true, so that he could leave the teachings of the opening eyes of all those major writings that occurred after Tatsunokuchi. Do you understand? Yeah. So it's just like all the problems of our life. This philosophy says that when we meet obstacles, they are there for us to defeat. When we defeat an obstacle, it becomes a benefit. Every time. Every time. Because we grow in that process at a minimum. But quite strangely, mystically, okay, the mystic aspect, the Myo aspect, the wonderful aspect of cause and effect, always validates that thing that seemed to be an obstacle, because we overcame it, because we utilized our faith to be the Buddha, to achieve the strength and the capacity in our life to make our environment conform to our will. That's the whole point. It's a good thing. It's a good thing. It's only because of those challenges that we grow. It's only because of those challenges that we're able to reveal our Buddha nature. So, now going back to page 21 on of the opening of the eyes, the lecture by President Ikeda. We're continuing on the subtitle where it says the sovereign teacher and parent of Buddhism of the sovereign teacher and parent of the Buddhism of sowing of the latter day. Okay, everybody's ready for me to start? My last drink of coffee. Yeah? In the foregoing, I have given an outline of the opening of the eyes as a treatise on the three virtues. Based on this, let's further consider the three virtues as embodied by Nichiren Daishonin, namely the sovereign, teacher, and parent of the Buddhism of sowing of the latter day of the law. Now, why is he going into this? Why is this important? Do you remember what we already talked about, what he already talked about? What did the Daishonin qualify in the opening of the eyes at the beginning? He's talking about three virtues. Okay, and he's talking about three philosophies to be used as the basis to be able to uncover and discover and understand correctly those three virtues, right? And who does he use as the example of the only one that's ever had all three virtues? Shakyamuni. Shakyamuni. Okay, so now it's important for us to understand that the Daishonin also has those three virtues and to qualify him as the original teacher. Okay, because that's necessary for him to be the original teacher. Do you understand? Okay, so based on this, let's further consider the three virtues as embodied by Nichiren Daishonin, namely the sovereign, teacher, and parent of the Buddhism of sowing of the latter day of the law. Everybody understands, right? How long is the latter day of the law?
After
10,000 years and beyond.
Yeah.
Yeah, it comes after Soho and Shoho, 1,000, 1,000, and then 10,000. So it's definitely, in terms of a time period, it's the longest, it's the most significant, right? It's also the one that carried over into the modern day where we have communication and that exponentiality for widespread propagation can be achieved. It's also in this era that the Soka Gakkai has appeared, and the bodhisattvas of the earth have all gathered together to accomplish their master's mission. Okay? The one that they've all taken a vow to uphold. Okay, the Daishonin did not merely awaken to Myoho Rengekyo, the seed for attaining Buddhahood. He steadfastly upheld this great law while taking on the shared suffering of all living beings of the latter day as his own personal sufferings. And without begrudging his life, he also expounded and spread the law for their sake. Evident is in his selfless dedication are the virtues of sovereign, teacher, and parent of the Buddhism of sowing of the latter day for awakening all people of this evil age and enabling them to attain Buddhahood. So what's he qualifying there?
He gave his life.
Yeah, he didn't just awaken, he lived. He lived this teaching. He didn't just awaken to Myoho Rengekyo. He lived actual Ichinen Sanzen. That's what we're getting. That's this whole thing is based on actual Ichinen Sanzen, right? Actual Ichinen Sanzen is what he was able to demonstrate with his life. It wasn't just a teaching. It's who he became as a human being. This is the key. Who we become as human beings is paramount compared to what we know. You could become awakened to something, and if you only perceive it theoretically, or you only actualize it from a theoretical standpoint, you don't actualize it as it relates to the actual life state that you achieve, is of no consequence, actually. It will not sustain past your present existence. Okay? It's not something that's universal to others. Do you understand? What we're talking about now is universal to all people, not just those that can perceive it or that have clever minds. All right? So, pardon me. First, Myoho Rengekyo is the fundamental law of the universe. Not only did Nichiren awaken to this law, but he also perceived and persevered in upholding it while overcoming relentless persecutions. This conduct proves that his life was completely one with Myoho Rengekyo, and that he manifested a state of being in which he was one with the universe itself. Everybody's with me? Okay, understand there's no distinction between him using Myoho Rengekyo right now and Nam-myoho Rengekyo. They are synonymous. Okay? This conduct proves that his life was completely one with Myoho Rengekyo, and that he manifested a state of being in which he was one with the universe itself, which is the state that we all achieve as well. We can view this vast and noble state of life as the virtue of sovereign. The virtue of sovereign in terms of Shakyamuni is expressed by the phrase in simile and parable, the 3rd chapter of the Lotus Sutra, "This threefold world is all my domain." The virtue of sovereign in terms of the Daishonin, meanwhile, could perhaps be expressed as follows: "The entire universe is my domain." Now, do you understand the significance of that?
What's the difference between the Shakyamuni and the Daishonin?
What is the difference?
Yeah.
One is Kuon Ganjo and one is Goyaku Jintingo.
Oh.
Okay? One is beginningless time and the other is majorless world system, dust particle corpus. Okay? That's the whole predication of our lineage, is perceiving that differently than those that decided not to. Do you understand? That's how the whole confusion about what represents, who represents, what entity represented the eternal Buddha. Okay? The truth is the eternal Buddha is represented by all things. All things. Okay? You can't qualify Nichiren as separated from anything because Nichiren was a human being. No human beings are separated. They seem to be separated, but they're not separated. The environment that they're in seems to be a separate thing, but it's not. It always occurs with them. They never occur separately. Therefore, they are always synonymous and one. You know, that's this whole concept of non-duality. right? So, again, when we speak of Myoho Renge-kyo, we're generally speaking of the Lotus Sutra, the law that the Lotus Sutra refers to without clarifying. We're usually referring to teachings that are based on the Buddhism of the harvest. Okay? And Nam-myoho Renge-kyo is 100% of the time always pertaining to the Buddhism of the sowing, right? And the latter day of the law, because it didn't exist until after the latter day of the law. Are you with me?
Yeah.
Okay, so, but is there a real difference? What is the Myoho Renge-kyo of the Lotus Sutra? What is the Lotus Sutra? I've tried to explain this to you guys before. Again, this is a very difficult concept to grasp. It is my own clarity, okay, I'll tell you that, but it's mentioned over and over and over again. What is the Lotus Sutra? That, again, first of all, it's a teaching, right?
Yes.
Because it had to be taught, it had to be verbalized, right? Then it became something that was translated and then carried over and so forth. So it became a teaching, right? But originally it wasn't. It was words, okay? And what do those words ultimately refer to? The eternity of life, okay? And the inseparability of all things, okay? That describes the eternal Buddha in a nutshell. All right? So when in the Lotus Sutra, in the text, they talk about you will be upholding the body of the Buddha, that the Lotus Sutra is literally the body of the Buddha, right?
Right.
What Buddha are they talking about?
Human.
Life itself, yes. But specifically, they're talking about the original teacher. The original teacher, because the original teacher precedes numberless major world system dust particle kalpas ago, right? Kuan Ganjo precedes Goyaku Jintingo. Okay? So if what we're doing is actually in the propagation, and in the Lotus Sutra itself, the text itself discusses the fact that this teaching of the Lotus Sutra has been propagated way before it was occurring at the ceremony in the air, on earth, right? Or at the you know, wherever it was that he was doing the preaching the Lotus Sutra, right? And so subsequently, you know, what then would have been being passed down? Think about it. When we talk about a law, that's pretty abstract. But what is the source of the law? Who clarified the law? What is the clarification of the law? The original teacher is the teacher of all other Buddhas.
Yes.
Only through Buddhas do you perceive the law. Who taught the Buddhas, all other Buddhas? Right? The original teacher. So if you're passing forward, if you're passing down something that's going to ultimately get into the latter day each time, okay? Because there's a former day, right? There's a middle day. There's a counterfeit teaching that's called the middle day, right? So the point is that in the Lotus Sutra, what was actually being conveyed, that was being passed through all of these Buddhas, that burning torch and all these dudes, all of these guys were teaching and passing on, processing an awareness and understanding of the original state. That's what they were trying to get everybody to. The original state and the Nam-myoho Renge-kyo, thus come one, are synonymous. They are one. They're the same thing. Just as we are. Just as we are. Do you understand? So, that's when you read this, you must understand. You know, we're not talking about two different things. When we talk about absolute Myo, we don't separate between Nichiren and Shakyamuni. They're a process. They're both just aspects of a process. Okay? A ultimate revealing of the truth. In the middle day and in the former day, the truth was the text of the Lotus Sutra. Because the people that were there to hear and be preached to did not have the fortune. It wasn't the appropriate time, nor the appropriate teacher. Do you understand? So perceive it from that aspect. Don't look at things now as we uncover this as Buddhism of the harvest and the Buddhism of the sowing. And there's nothing that overlays. Because we just qualified when I read this, okay, that through absolute Myo, Relative myo becomes actualized in all teachings, right? So there's the Buddhism of the harvest and the Buddhism of the sowing are just two different time periods for the same principle, the same aspect, the same capacity to be passed on. Do you understand?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Everybody's clear with that then, right?
Yes.
All right. Good. Seems like you all got it. I appreciate that. All right. So I'll start again. First, Myoho Renge-kyo is the fundamental law of the universe. I could just as easily say Nam Myoho Renge-kyo. Okay? Not only did Nichiren awaken to this law, but he also persevered in upholding it while overcoming relentless persecutions. But what did he uphold? He didn't uphold the Buddhism of the harvest.
No.
He upheld the Buddhism of the sowing.
Yeah.
So when we're talking about this law, we are talking about Nam Myoho Renge-kyo, even though he's referring to it as Myoho Renge-kyo, because that's what its identity was preceding the revelations of the Buddhism of the sowing by the eternal Buddha and the manifestation of Nichiren. Do you understand? Does this all make sense?
Yes.
Okay. Okay, while overcoming relentless persecutions. Who else could have done that? Who else would have done that? Did Shakyamuni do that? Yeah, he overcame some, but nothing like Nichiren.
Yeah.
Nothing like Nichiren. Again, everybody got a little bit of shit, but nobody got as much shit as Nichiren. Okay? Why? He's the only one capable of handling it. He's the only one that could have done what he did. Okay? That's why he's the original teacher. He took the whole hit for everybody. He said, here, let me have a life that none of you want to have to follow in my footsteps. But this is what's necessary for me to reveal a teaching that you can all emulate, and you can all get yourself out of every one of the situations I'm going to show you I got myself out of. Okay? Even if they're going to cut off your head. Don't lament begrudging your life. All right? All right? This conduct proves that his life was completely one with Myoho Renge-kyo. Nam Myoho Renge-kyo. Do you understand? His conduct. It's not that he awakened to it. He's not like Tentai, who stays on Mount Tentai, doesn't even go to the big debate because he knows they're going to try and kill him. Do you understand that about Tentai?
Yeah.
You know, Tentai was called to come and participate in a debate with the other schools. They were going to probably off him. He didn't go. He didn't go. That's why he lived to tell his tale.
Yeah.
All right? He was smart enough to know. Again, that's why we don't just plow into everything without... We always call for wisdom. We don't do anything without chanting Nam Myoho Renge-kyo about it. We don't lament anything without chanting Nam Myoho Renge-kyo about it. All right? So, this conduct proves that his life was completely one with Myoho Renge-kyo and that he manifested a state of being in which he was one with the universe itself. Okay? That's called Buddhahood. We can view this vast. So he achieved Buddhahood, actual Ichinen Sanzen, in his present form. You get it? We can view this vast and noble state of life as the virtue of sovereign. The virtue of sovereign, in terms of Shakyamuni, is expressed by the phrase in the simile and parable of the 3rd chapter. Okay, I already read all this, pardon me. In his unceasing efforts to advance Kosen Rufu in accord with his vow, summoning the heart of the Lion King, they're speaking about Nichiren, and remaining undaunted in the face of the direst persecution, we can see a majesty and dignity resembling that of the Lotus Sutra's gigantic treasure tower that rises magnificently in the air. Everybody's with me?
Yeah.
Okay. Nichiren, because Shakyamuni was sitting inside the thing, right?
Yeah.
Okay. So next, and whose treasure tower was it? Was it Shakyamuni's treasure tower?
No.
No, it was Tahoe's treasure tower. It was Tahoe's the one who, it was his manner of conveyance. Because why did Tahoe show up? He had long been extinct, according to that sutra. Why did many treasures appear? At the ceremony in the air. He doesn't show up in the first 13 chapters, 14 chapters. He isn't there until it's time to what? validate that everything Shakyamuni is saying is true and without
False.
error.
Yeah,
Without error. Okay? That's why he comes. He comes to be the validator. Even though what he's saying now is completely different than everything he's been saying, I've come back from wherever the hell I was, across the universe somewhere, supposedly, okay, out of my state of tranquility, of extinction, in order to listen to the law preached by Shakyamuni and to validate that what he's saying is true. And why? Because I've preached this same law. I've preached this same teaching. This isn't even originating with Shakyamuni according to the Lotus Sutra. Read what it says, right? Who taught him the Lotus Sutra? His dad. Great Universal Wisdom Excellence Buddha. He was the 16th son of that Buddha. Do you understand? Well, you don't know that, but that is the case. He talks about that. That's when he first encountered the law. Okay, the virtue of... Okay. His unceasing efforts to advance Kosen Rufu in accord with his vow, summoning the heart of Lion King and remaining undaunted in the face of the direst persecutions, we can see a majesty and dignity resembling that of the Lotus Sutra's gigantic treasure tower that rises magnificently in the air. Okay, next, the Daishonin developed a form of practice to make the law of Myoho Renge-kyo, Nam-myoho Renge-kyo, which he had revealed in his own life. Because again, Myoho Renge-kyo is the life of the Buddha. Nam-myoho Renge-kyo is the indivisible aspect of that life with all other things. Which he had revealed in his own life, accessible to all people. Everybody's with me, right?
Yeah.
He guided people to the path of Buddhahood with the clear mirror of the Gohonzon and with the Daimoku of faith and practice. Right? He left us the clear perception and understanding of what we must do to achieve the same state, the identical state. This can be viewed as a manifestation of the virtue of teacher. And in order to free people from suffering, the Daishonin tirelessly continued teaching that ordinary people of the latter day could reveal the world of Buddhahood in their own lives in this lifetime, in their present lifetime. At the same time, he warned of the ills that arose from a mind of slander characterized by disbelief in the existence of the Buddha nature in oneself and others, and he denounced teachings that exerted a negative influence on people and drew them into slandering the law. Now, what did he just refer to there? He says, at the same time, he warned of the ills that arose from a mind of slander characterized. The mind of slander that he's warning about is characterized by what? Disbelief in the existence of the Buddha nature in oneself and others. So it's characterized by...
Slender.
Yeah, but by what's the innate nature in your life that's characterized by?
Buddhahood.
Yeah, but whenever I talk about disbelief in the existence of Buddhahood, Buddha nature in oneself and others, it's always oneself and others. What are we talking about? We're talking about the devil of the sixth heaven. Okay? We're talking about this slander is characterized by the effect exerted by fundamental darkness. All right? You with me?
Yes.
And he denounced teachings that did not light the path away from that and instead led toward it. All right? Exerted a negative influence on people and drew them into slandering the law, drew them into not being able to perceive their own Buddha nature and the Buddha nature of all others, drew them into the association of control by the devil of the sixth heaven. Are you with me? All right. And though the Daishonin and though the Daishonin's castigation, do you know what castigation means? It means like he's constantly, saying no, 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 no. Absolutely incorrect. It's slander. He's calling it out for what it is. Castigation is to punitively demean something, right? Castigation of slander provoked wave upon wave of persecution. In other words, the more he talked about the fact that what all of you are doing is absolutely wrong and you must stop it immediately, the more he did that, the more he was persecuted. Okay? But did he go away from teaching this correct teaching that would ultimately lead all people to enlightenment in the latter day of the law, in the 10,000 years and beyond of Mappo? No. He persevered. He endured every onslaught. Okay? This is entirely due to his immense compassion, because he had already taken a vow to make everyone equal to himself. Again, in simile and parable, the 3rd chapter, Shakyamuni's virtue of parent is indicated by the passage, all living beings in the threefold world are my children. Similarly, in Nichiren's conduct of spreading the teaching while enduring all hardship, we can discern the virtue of parent, characterized by a spirit of caring and concern for the well-being of the people of the latter day, as if they were his own children, because he was ready to give his life in order to facilitate and actualize the means for them to hit the same Buddhahood he was already enjoying. Okay? He didn't have to share it with everybody else. He knew fully, based on the doctrine of the encouraging devotion chapter, that the shit was going to hit the fan. He already knew the 3 powerful enemies were going to come after him. All right? But he didn't, that's in all kinds of goshas, where he says, I already knew what was going to happen. That's why I've never lamented a bit of it, and none of it really bothers me at all. It was fully expected. All right? Continuing on page 22. Everybody's with me, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
A pioneer and example of ordinary people attaining Buddhahood. What's it say there? He's talking about us. Talking about us. And a pioneer, in other words, he's the original trailblazer and example, a living example of somebody actually doing what he's saying we can all do. Okay?
That's us.
As the initiator, what's the initiator? The catalytic spark, the beginner, the originator. As the originator and pioneer of Kosen Rufu in the latter day, what's that? As the initiator and pioneer of the propagation of the Buddhism of the sowing for the sake of the enlightenment of all living beings, okay, which only occurs in the latter day, all right? The Daishonin spread the great law for the enlightenment of all people. And through that struggle, it's through that struggle, that's what we were just talking about, remember? Just a moment ago.
Yes.
Without the struggle, the advance does not occur. It's only because what seemed like was punishment or something bad occurring, or why am I not being protected, that in reality the great scheme of life reveals itself. Okay? None of us can become parents until we have children, right? I mean, that is it's a process. Everything is a process. We are constantly growing whether we perceive that growth or not. Right? All right, so he naturally became endowed with the virtues of sovereign, teacher, and parent. Okay? Do you understand? All right. From the standpoint of the disciples who follow in his footsteps, who would that be? Us. Nichiren's pioneering struggle can be regarded as the model of an ordinary person attaining actual Ichinen Senzen, attaining Buddhahood in the latter day of the law. We could be just like him.
Yes.
Be like Mike. He writes, here a single individual has been used as an example, but the same thing applies equally to all living beings. So he's not even just talking about Earth. He just escaped Earth in that context. Okay? Do you understand? All right, so, and that comes from my favorite Gosho, the unanimous declaration of the Buddhas, by all the Buddhas. Okay, the Daishonin serves as our first example as of an ordinary person attaining Buddhahood. As such, we regard him as the object of devotion in terms of the person. Everybody understands? Does everybody understand? That's what Nichikan was pulling together in his sixfold teaching, or sixfold secret teaching, that qualifies Nichiren as the object of devotion in terms of the person, and the person and the law being inseparable. Do we understand? As far as what is the Gohonzon? Okay, everybody's with me?
Yes.
Okay, related to this point, I recall that Tsunesaburo Makaguchi, the Soka Gakkai's first president, drew a distinction between the position of a sage or worthy who discovers the truth and teaches it to others, and that of us ordinary people who create value by believing in and practicing that truth. He felt it was perfectly reasonable that only one sage or worthy might discover the ultimate truth, and that others would have the mission of practicing that truth and proving its validity. He explains it this way. The process of revealing the teaching, in other words, the teaching system, employed by the pioneering sage or worthy so that we will place our faith in that teaching, and the process of ordinary people adopting it into their daily lives, that is, the process by which we become to believe in, be guided by, and strive for lives of supreme happiness based on that teaching, ought to be completely different. Now, again, let me go back to the beginning of that and go back through it. What did he just say there, though? What's he say at the very beginning of that? He's saying, what I'm about to tell you is part of the Soka philosophy. It will not be found in Nichiren Shoshu. Do you understand? Because he qualifies from the beginning. I recall that Tsunesaburo Makaguchi had this opinion.
Yeah.
Okay, this is Tsunesaburo Makaguchi's take on this, and President Ikeda finds the validity in it in order to share it with us. So again, this is part of the lineage of understanding that we are embracing in practicing as the Soka philosophy. And what is he saying there, basically? He's saying that the sage or worthy, and everybody remembers what the difference between a sage and a worthy is, right? A sage perceives things and doesn't have to be taught them. A worthy can be taught those things and teach them. Okay? Carry on. All right? He's saying that basically the fundamental path of existence doesn't have to be for the same for every individual to achieve exactly the same thing. Do you understand? We don't have to go to Tatsunokuchi. We don't have to be challenged with life and death situations. Okay? Because of the compassion and the mercy of the original teacher is that not expecting that out of everybody. The original teacher doesn't expect everybody to have the same faith as the original teacher. The original teacher's compassion is to live a life in order to exemplify how to get there, but doesn't qualify in advance. You must go through everything I've gone through. Yes, must we go through being attacked by the three powerful enemies? Yeah, relative to our existence. Are we really, am I going to be contacted by somebody from the central government? I hope not. Okay? These are the realities of the truth, that we share these aspects, but they're not identical experientially. We have different missions. Okay? Each one of our missions is completely unique to us. No two people's missions are the same. They're all equal. That's the cool thing. I don't have to go to Tatsunokuchi to be a true Buddha. I can achieve actual Ichinen Sanzen without the government calling me. You get it? We all have different missions, but none of those missions are more important than another. There's no greater Buddha and lesser Buddha. There's no supreme Buddha and student Buddha. You get it? Actual Ichinen Sanzen is actual Ichinen Sanzen, and it's a switch. When it flips on, it doesn't go back. It's on. You are the thus come one exactly as you are. And nothing can change your understanding of that truth. And that truth is taught over and over and over and over and over again. And you've all read the words over and over and over again. And they've either instigated the switch going on, or it hasn't gone on yet. You're still in the process of turning the switch on. But does that make those that have turned the switch on different or greater than those who have not yet turned the switch on? Absolutely not. That's not the Buddhism of the great equality of Nam Myoho Renge Kyo. Do you all understand? So, what's the difference between the teacher and the one being taught?
One knows it first.
Absolutely nothing. Absolutely nothing. Because how can you say who knew what first? Because we don't exist only in one existence. So who taught when? Okay? Who's the student and who's the real teacher? We see many examples of that. Okay? The student becomes the real teacher. Okay? So we don't qualify those things because what we do is we try to get the wisdom to stop that process of qualification. Stop seeing things differentiated with good ones and bad ones. Okay? And separation. Life is life is life is life. People is people is people is people. The Buddha nature is the Buddha nature. It exists in all things. You disrespect anybody, you're disrespecting the Buddha nature. This is the whole predication of the teaching. To awaken the wisdom to understand that with your life. Okay? Now, how do you understand that with your life as a common mortal? Is this a function of knowing something? No, this is a function of life condition.
Yeah.
So how do you sustain that wisdom? Only through correct practice, which means chanting Nam-myoho Renge Kyo the Gohonzon consistently, daily, continuously. You never get to a point where, oh, I know now, so now I don't have to embrace the teaching. I don't have to embrace the original teacher. No. Okay, this is the whole thing. We sustain ourselves on a daily basis in this fashion. This is how we bring the 10th world into our 9 worlds. We don't ever become a 10th world entity. Do you understand? We are ordinary people just like Nichiren. Nichiren did it the same way. Did Nichiren ever come to a point in his life where he said, okay, now that I've been chanting for 30 years, I no longer have to chant Nam-myoho Renge Kyo, but I've taught you all what you need to do until you've achieved. No. No. Does Daisaku Ikeda ever get to a point where he doesn't have to chant anymore? No. Not that he's talked about to anything that I've written, that I've read. Okay? That's why leaders who believe that since they're leaders, they're too busy doing the important work of Kosen Rufu, they don't have to chant abundant daimoku anymore, are full of shit! Okay? No one gets to the point where they don't have to chant abundant daimoku anymore, especially if they're leading. Because it's life condition. It's not based on all this shit. Yeah, you got to know this stuff for it to make sense to be able to explain it to other people. But the ability to explain it to other people isn't the point. The point is to live the life and to be the Buddha. Okay? That's when what you teach them will be accepted by them because they go, God damn. You know?
Makes sense.
Makes sense. Okay? Because the only way it can make sense is through the living example of life itself. Not through words, not through concepts. That's a tempo and an okos. You know, having somebody that's very, very capable to know theology. You know, giving a little mind stroke so you feel better for another week and you come back next week. That's not what this is about. Okay? That's not the gift we're trying to give to people. All right? Where am I?
I have a question.
Sure.
I'm just thinking about that. What is wrong teaching and life state? Because when we say about
I have to make sure that I understood you.
Yeah.
Did you say wrong teaching?
wrong teaching and the life state.
Okay.
Because this time when I come back, I realized that a lot of people says that for example, some leaders have the wrong teaching or wrong idea. But for me, I think that's just because they don't have the enough life state to understand this Buddhism. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Uh-huh.
I would agree with you because the life state will supersede the lack of correct teacher because your Buddha nature will suck you right along to that correct teaching. Okay, but you're talking about karma now.
Yeah.
You're talking about karma. Okay, and correct teacher or incorrect teacher is always a function of karma.
Yeah.
Okay, the correct teaching is always out there.
Yeah.
But you got to find a correct teacher to be able to, turn the switch on,
Mm-hmm.
to be able to help you perceive that. Because the same teaching that we're studying now is studied by other groups of Nietzschean believers, and they don't perceive it in the manner that I'm reading it right now.
Uh-huh.
Okay?
Yes.
So it's always about fortune. It's karma.
It's karma.
It's karma. And it's about mission.
Yes.
It's about mission. What is your mission? Is your mission to help people achieve happiness? Is your mission to be able to make people equal to yourself and actually empower them? Or is your, mission, and then this is no longer mission. If it's not Kosa and Rufu, that's the only mission that there is. When we talk about mission, it's the vow.
Mm-hmm.
It's nothing that's separate, and there's no separation between that vow and the actions that you take. So if you're not actually functioning in accord with the vow, you don't have the vow.
Yeah.
You don't understand the vow. You're not capable of teaching the vow or living the vow. Okay? And who allows you to perceive that correctly? That's the teacher. So you can either accept Daisaku Ikeda's teaching, or you can reject it. I'm sure there are a lot of people who might listen to what I'm saying and just reject it. In fact, I happen to know that there are. Okay?
So what do they say?
What do they say? I don't care what they say.
You don't need
don't
to.
Some of them say I'm not authorized. Some of them say, some of them don't say anything. They are in a fundamental state of stagnation. Their unfortunate slander has obscured their vision to the point that they have to peel back the layers to be able to see clearly. It's not up to me to say words that penetrate. It's not, that isn't how it works. There's not a great savior that saves everyone and taps them on the head with a magic wand and says all the karma that you've accumulated and created through your own actions and ignorance is absolved and you don't have to go through anything.
But
for that.
in people's thinking, there is a lot of like this.
They're full of shit then. And you have to kind of help be able to explain that in a way without saying you're full of shit. Okay? Which means you have to understand what the teaching is.
Yeah.
Which is why I constantly qualify Soka philosophy versus Nichiren Shoshu versus Nichiren Buddhism. Okay? Because you don't know who you're going to talk to. And there are a lot of people you could speak to in regard to what I'm now qualifying to you. And they go, well, where are you getting that? Nobody said that. I don't believe in, Daisaku Ikeda. I could give a shit what Josei Toda said. Those guys were like Nichiren Shoshu people, weren't they?
Yeah.
Okay? So you talk to the Nichiren Shu, you're talking about, don't forget there are lots of people chanting Nam-myoho Renge-kyo right now that are not thinking the way that I'm talking right now. Okay? So this is a point. This is a point. Adopting the correct thinking. Now, my thinking was actually divine. I was set off on a path by my teachers. The beautiful thing for me is I found out later, as I kept my mouth shut for years, because I didn't have the position to challenge it. Actually, President Ikeda, I can be your disciple, man, because we don't have there are no issues. I already believed everything that you're saying before I ever read you say it. But since you said it, now I can say it out loud and not worry. Okay? That's karma.
Okay.
That's karma. Again, why did I have Tony Matsuoka, who had been at the temple? I mean, why did I walk up to that guy at my second meeting? Why did he suddenly glom on me because of the questions that I asked and whatever? And I could go on and on and on and on. I couldn't have foreseen any of you guys. I'm sharing things that you weren't around when I started this. Okay? So you don't know the path. You don't know who you're connected to. You don't know what the outflow will ultimately be. I know for a fact Mr. Matsuoka and Mr. Osaki both died before the internet age. They'd be freaking out to be thinking I'd be sitting at a table here right now and that this is getting recorded. And that their teaching to me is actually being passed on. Okay? Because I discovered, it's all contained within President Ikeda's teaching. Everything, you guys were disciples of Daisaku Ikeda. I wasn't. I became a disciple of Daisaku Ikeda and realized later, That's what I really know. When I first read the Soka Gakkai used the term the Soka philosophy, I freaked out. You know, I freaked out because I thought, okay, everything those guys told me. Because when the split happened, when the split happened, I went to both sides equally. You know, I was right in there, all up in there with all the priest people. Okay, they were all looking at me as like, yeah, he's capable. Let's see, you know. So I heard all of their propaganda, and they said, oh, you know, Soka Gakkai is going to do their own thing. They're going to make their own this and their own that, and they're going to, you know, they're going to replicate their own Gohonzon and all these kinds. Back then, at that moment, those all seemed like really far-fetched things to hear. But in truth and reality, they've actually all occurred. All right? Now, the difference, though, is that as I listened to all those things from the Nichiren Shoshu side, I kept running into this issue of the high priest. And you're qualifying him as being different and greater than me. And that the priesthood itself has this special function and this special something, you know? Then they're not ordinary human beings, is what you're saying. And this is all predicated around ordinary human beings. Okay? So it ultimately, I hadn't read anything from President Ikeda yet. Okay? I hadn't made the effort to. It took a life experience that forced me to decide I wanted to be the Buddha. I wanted to get to the bottom of this. I'm tired of getting benefits. You know, just benefits is not doing it for me anymore. I need to understand what I don't understand, why I don't understand it, because I know it's there. I know it's there. It's working, but there's and so I chanted and chanted and chanted and chanted about Buddhahood. And most people don't ever chant about Buddhahood. It never occurs to them to chant about Buddha. Okay? But if the entire premise of the whole teaching is about attaining Buddhahood, shouldn't we contemplate Buddhahood? Shouldn't we contemplate more than just, I need something now in a momentary state of existence that's only going to get me out of trouble in a momentary state of existence? Every benefit I got only changed a temporary circumstance. It didn't lead to anything that actually lasted.
Oh yeah, because it's changing.
Yeah, because it's constantly changing. So I'm missing something. And so that was the pursuit that made me to read and whatever. That's why it ultimately led to us sitting around this table. Okay, so everybody understands we're still on page 22, and I know I'm going really slow. But again, he's saying, understand, perceive these things when you read Daisaku Ikeda. He qualifies. This is Tanesaburo Makaguchi's opinion. Okay? He's not saying, now you can reject it if you want. He's expressing that he believes this opinion, but he is qualifying that this is a departure from doctrine that's preceded the existence of the Soka Gakkai. Do you understand? Mm-hmm. And what he's basically saying is, again, we don't have to go through the type of tribulations and the confrontations and the same manner of the three powerful enemies manifesting in our existence when we achieve actual Ichinen and sunset, as Daishonin did. We don't have to have our heads almost cut off. We don't have to be burning torch. Remember, we talked about this in the last discussion, and go for kalpas and show our perseverance and compassion by burning our arms. All that shit is as an example to qualify the spirit in which we are to pursue this. All right? We didn't have to come out of World War II in Tokyo with our houses all burned up and most of the people that we knowing having been dead and having lost everything and having weird people walk up to us and say, have you heard of Nam-myoho Renge-kyo? If you chant these words, you say these words, you can change all of this misery and suffering. That's why the Soka Gakkai grew. Why did the Soka Gakkai grow? Because of the devastation of World War II. That's the only reason it did. Mm-hmm. Why did all those Japanese be willing to give up what they had done before World War II? It didn't save them. It didn't protect them. They were up the creek without a paddle. Okay? That's why. That's all karma. Karma to be one of the original disciples. Karma to be associated at that level. We have a different karma. It's not a worse karma. It's not a better karma.
No.
Karma as mission, as a bodhisattva of the earth, is 100% equal no matter what that is for each individual. Do you understand that?
Yes.
Or else there'd be lesser and greater children of the Buddha, and there's no such thing.
No.
Do you understand?
Yes.
All right, so he's saying at the end of that paragraph on page 22, the process of revealing the teachings, in other words, the teaching system employed by the pioneering sage or worthy, so that we will place our faith in that teaching, and the process of ordinary people adopting it into their daily lives, that is, the process by which we come to believe in, be guided by, and strive for lives of supreme happiness based on that teaching, ought to be completely different. They are. In other words, he is saying that after a sage or worthy appears and establishes a fundamental truth or teaching that all people should believe and practice, it is up to us, ordinary people, to put the conclusions of that sage or worthy into practice and experience the results for ourselves, thereby gaining an understanding of that truth with our own lives, so we can become the mentor. Do you understand? That's the only way we can be the mentor. If we're just parroting, if we're just imitating, we could have misunderstood something. And now we've set a whole crooked line up. You know physics or geometry, that once that thing's off even a degree, the longer it goes, the farther away it goes. Farther off course it is. Do you understand? Mm-hmm. So, why is it is up to us ordinary people to put the conclusions of that sage or worthy into practice and experience the results for ourselves, thereby gaining an understanding of the truth of our own lives? What's he basically saying there? After the sage or worthy has shown us how to become Buddhas in reality, how to achieve actual Ichen and Sanzen, it is up to us to achieve actual Ichen and Sanzen.
Yes.
Do you understand? Mm-hmm. All right. So he notes, however, that there are those who seek to transmit the teaching of the sage or worthy by demanding that people go through the same process by which the sage or worthy reached his conclusion. Okay? You got to go sit out in the wilderness or do whatever. No. He says, but by doing so, he declares, is a great mistake and a pointless waste of time. This is all about this competition to be as pure as another person. You're so pure, I want to be pure like you. You know? And the purity that you perceive others is always delusion. You don't hear them fart, but as human beings, they fart. Okay? And when they fart, it stinks. Okay? They're ordinary human beings. They do every life function that you do. But would you really be, no. We always look up to those ideals in that way. But we must perceive them as the same as us, not different or separate from us. And he criticizes such individuals for mistakenly thinking that truth is the same as value. And that's what we're talking about. Value, causality. All right? President Makaguchi regarded the realization, and he's again continuing, this is Makaguchi's philosophy. This is what started the Soka movement. Okay? This is his thing. President Makaguchi regarded the realization of happiness for oneself and others as the ultimate purpose or goal of human life. What does that say? What did that just say? Regarded the realization of happiness for oneself and others. What is that? Whenever you read this stuff, read what it's really saying. President Makaguchi regarded propagating the Buddhism of the sowing for the sake of the achievement of actual Ichen and Sanzen in every single person as the ultimate goal or purpose of human life. It's the only thing in this lifetime that's eternal. It's the only thing that you get a eternal pass on. It's not for a couple of lifetimes. It's not for the causal cycle. It's when actual Ichen and Sanzen is achieved in your life, you will achieve actual Ichen and Sanzen in every single lifetime to come. It's the only thing you can do with this life that will last for every single lifetime to come. Do you understand? That's why it's the paramount thing to do. Nothing else gives you a return on that investment like this. Do you understand? This is the ultimate dividend, the ultimate annuity. Just keeps paying. For him, therefore, actually eliminating suffering and creating happiness was the end, while theory was nothing more than a means for achieving it. Do you understand? Action, 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 action. Actual Ichinen Sanzen is a circumstance that was given rise by action, not by knowing things. You can know about actual Ichinen Sanzen if you don't chant Daimoku. There's no way it's coming out. Moreover, he felt it desirable that an ordinary person serve as the model in those efforts. That you not be some holier-than-thou white knight person separated from the muck and the mire of the people you're trying to reach. You need to be just like them so they can see, if you can do it, I can do it. Or that you have the actual empathy and wisdom from life experience to know who they really are rather than who they appear to be. It's only through creating the salvation in your own life that you can have that empathy for others and go, oh, I know, you're not a bad guy. You just still drink. You need to stop drinking. You know, I used to drink. I'm an alcoholic too. You know, those are the experiences that allow you to find the true gold at the core of every person. Otherwise, you're tainted with all these opinions and the bullshit of common mortal people. They're not enlightened. You know, the people that are casting all these aspersions and creating all these attitudes, they're not Buddhists. That's delusion that you're hearing. You get it? Okay, so it's up to us to achieve that clarity and that wisdom, though. We're not going to be able to borrow it from other people. It's not something that's borrowable. It's actual Ichinen Sanzen. That's why there's a theoretical Ichinen Sanzen that's defined and an actual Ichinen Sanzen that's defined. So you can understand. This understanding is theoretical unless it's actualized. Okay? That is, if the role model offering the highest concrete example is a person who is complete and perfect, then those seeking to emulate that example will find it a goal inspiring reverence, but also personally unapproachable and unattainable. Okay? That's why we can't all be Daisaku Ikeda. We would not achieve Kosen Rufu if all of us were Daisaku Ikeda. Don't you understand? We all have our own mission. That's why we came up and popped up with this kind of circumstance. We're all thus come ones. All right? It's not like there's a bad one and a good one. It took me decades to figure this out. Decades I judged my life incorrectly. Decades I could have been the Buddha and I wasn't. Simply because I expected the Buddha to be something that I didn't have the wisdom to perceive that it was not. I was looking for perfection. I was looking for somehow I'm going to become a different guy. Ask my wife. That ain't going to happen. Maybe ever. Okay? Instead, President Makaguchi regarded someone who carries out the beneficial practice of sowing seeds. When I say how many times have I said it? That's what our function is. Because it's their karma whether or not they're going to embrace it. Okay? But we can sow seeds all day long, all right, while remaining an ordinary person of the lowest standing in society as a person of unsurpassed character. Everybody understood that? Most noteworthy, most respect-worthy is a person who can serve as a model for those whose lives are steeped in suffering, all right? Nichiren Daishonin was born as an ordinary person in an age rife with suffering, and he dedicated his life to the humanistic practice of enabling struggling, ordinary people to bring forth their inherent Buddhahood. As a result, he encountered all manner of persecution. Through those ordeals, he read the Lotus Sutra with his life, thereby proving the validity of its teachings. And he showed through his example the incredible strength and potential within all human beings. With regard to this point, President Makaguchi said, if this Shakyamuni's Buddhism and the Lotus Sutra in particular becomes relevant in the actual world as a result of Nichiren Daishonin's appearance, and moreover, if the universal principle of causality is proven by the persecutions for the law that he underwent in his lifetime, then won't the abstract ideals of the Lotus Sutra have become a reality in our lives through the Buddhism of the sowing?
Yes.
And the Lotus Sutra of Shakyamuni, of the form in the middle of the day of law, is completely abstract. Come on. The treasure tower, how many yoyanas big? Come on. That's abstract. Okay? innumerable bodhisattvas appearing from the earth, a crack appearing, a bunch of dudes, like, more than the Ganges, sands of the Ganges rivers, each with their own crew, each with their own group of disciples, also great. Come on! This is completely abstract, okay? But when we talk about it from absolute myo, when we perceive it from our missions as bodhisattvas of the earth, when we have the vehicle of the Soka Gakkai and the teachings of President Makaguchi Toda and President Keita to help launch us in the right direction, when we don't rely on others, when we engage ourselves and bring this awareness and this wisdom out in our own lives, when we achieve actual Ichen and Sanzen, ourselves as common mortals, as ordinary people, then the abstract teaching of the Lotus Sutra has become exactly what he just described it. Okay? Where am I?
15. Yes.
Oh, we're past. It's okay. He continued. This is not simply limited to one person, Nichiren Daishonin. As he indicates when he says that it applies to all people, this is something that we who carry out faith and practice for ourselves and others can easily prove. The Daishonin thus stressed that he, who propagated the teaching while enduring immense hardship and persecution, is the Buddha of the latter day of the law, whom we should look to as our model. President Makaguchi's insightful comments illustrate how he always approached Buddhism from the standpoint of a person of faith and practice. They also reveal his humanistic spirit to view all people as being equally precious and worthy of respect. And next time we will continue on page 23. God, I only got 2 pages. A revolutionary new view of religion. But I wanted to say hi to our friend in Philadelphia. Hi, Marilyn and Ms. Castro. Thank you for joining us. That's it. Thanks.
Thank you.
Okay, we'll finish.